almost like this club is cursed. It's like they are cursed in these competitions. If you look all the way back in Newcastle's history, they're just massive moments. Are Newcastle United just absolutely cursed when it comes to winning a trophy? The last time the Magpies had their hands on a trophy was in 1955. And since then, it's just not been good for the Toon Army. An absolutely massive club who deserve silverware, and they're getting themselves back to a conversation of which now they've not been in for years and years and years, of being in that semi-final, of which really going back until the late 90s, Newcastle haven't been in the conversation. But this weekend has been a massive crushing blow to the Toon Army's hopes of potentially getting to back Wembleys. Welcome everybody, my name is Conor McGilligan, this is my channel, and if you would consider subscribing, that would be absolutely fantastic, would really appreciate it. We've got news on the Championship, the Premier League, and we do videos on that every single week, so please consider subscribing. I'm going to take you back to last year, everybody. I'm going to take you back to the Carabao Cup final, but we're going to go a little bit before that. The Toon Army came up against the red half of Liverpool. Stay with me because that's going to come to the fore towards the back end of the conversation. And Nick Pope had a moment of madness, of which he came out, tried to collect a ball. I believe it was up against Mo Salah, and made an absolute cataclysmic attempt at it. Straight red card, and he's then out for the Carabao Cup final. At that point, I believe Nick Pope had made 12 clean sheets, or had 12 clean sheets in 17. He was monumental for Newcastle, obviously, in that period of time where they were just keeping clean sheet after clean sheet. They looked strong. The rear guard was exceptional. They got that midfield composition absolutely perfect. And it felt like they were going to go on. And against Man United in the final, they were going to win it, but that absolute emotional moment of madness from Nick Pope, the straight red, Anthony Taylor, you know what he's like, you can't wait to give them out anyway, gave it to Nick Pope, and that was it. You kind of went into the cup final, and I believe it was Karius who came in, and you're thinking, well, that leader at the back, that man who's had so much experience, that man who is so good between the sticks, one of England's best, is now out, and it's a massive chasm in Newcastle's back line. And obviously they then went on to lose the game. Man United played maybe the better on the day. They went out and won Carabao Cup final, and you can bring it back maybe a little bit to experience in these events. You know, when you do look at Man United, and when you look at maybe Liverpool and Arsenal in these big events, these big games, they've got experience. We always look at Real Madrid in the Champions League, don't we? They don't have to be at the best, but there is a Real Madrid aura. It's because they've done it before. They've got their experience. Newcastle, for me, just haven't got that yet. And they haven't, you know, it's, look, you look at the trophy cabinet, Newcastle just haven't had that really since 1955. And you actually look at even the big run-in that they had with Manchester United when they gave up that famous lead that they had, where Kevin Keegan was in charge of that team, when they were the entertainers. They were the great entertainers. They were a fantastic team to watch. They gave up that lead to Fergie's Manchester United. And as I've mentioned, the 74 Cup final, I believe their arch rivals, Sunderland beat Leeds United the year before. They didn't win that cup final in 74. Then you get to the late 90s where they lose back-to-back finals, Arsenal in the FA Cup final, then Man United in the FA Cup final, I believe it was a year later, by the same scoreline. You need to build up this pedigree. You need to build up this litany of results in cup competitions, and Newcastle just haven't done that as of yet. And the weekend, it has to be said, was absolutely ridiculous in my mindset for Newcastle. And as being a Leeds United supporter, I'm used to us getting to cup finals in previous yesteryear anyway, or at least close to them. Probably the nearest in my lifetime has been the Champions League semi-final, and Leeds not been able to do it. So us not been able to do a similar thing to Newcastle in terms of getting over the line. My old man, as a Leeds United supporter, has always said that Leeds should have won a hell of a lot more, and that is the exact same conversation that has to be labelled at Newcastle United. But at the weekend, you've got to this point again, and it needs calm, cool heads. It needs experience from last season, taking it to this point, and the players just getting it over the line. And obviously they play a cup competition yesterday, and it all went massively wrong for Newcastle United. FA Cup at the weekend saw Brighton travel to Newcastle. Who's the favourites in that game? You don't really know. Maybe Newcastle with that home advantage. Brighton are an exceptional team on their day. We all know this. But Newcastle, St James's Park, it was absolutely set up for Newcastle to win that game. And just for reference point, everybody, we saw yesterday Manchester United, even though it's not the best Manchester United, this is a Manchester United side who are the holders of the FA Cup. They go out to Fulham. Excellent football side, but with the greatest of respect, we're speaking about cup competitions, we're speaking about aura, we're speaking about experience. Manchester United now out is absolutely massive. If Newcastle would have won that game, they would have been playing Nottingham Forest or Ipswich in the quarterfinals, and then potentially Preston in the latter stages. Or, of course, it could be Villa, but these were the teams left in it as of yesterday. Fulham, Palace, Preston, Villa, Bournemouth, City, and Brighton, because of them beating Newcastle and Forest or Ipswich. Now, this is unbelievable. What an insane opportunity this was for Newcastle to get to the final and win this competition. Some Newcastle fans would turn around and say, this is actually more important than the Carabao Cup final, of which they're in a couple of weeks' time, I believe it is, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, because they're coming up against the Liverpool side, who are flying at this moment in time, probably going to be champions-elect, if we've been honest with each other. And it's the Liverpool side who've beaten them recently as well, Szoboszlai and McAllister at Anfield. So that there is a potential right now that this cup competition in the FA Cup, even though Newcastle are in the or would have been in the quarterfinals, would have been potentially easier to win than the Carabao Cup competition. Or Newcastle could have had back-to-back FA Cup and Carabao Cup wins. My goodness, imagine that. Since 1955, they've not won anything. And back-to-back cup competitions, which could have been likely. But there was a big problem yesterday, and it comes at the feet of Anthony Gordon. Gordon gets sent off with a moment of head loss. He just basically pushes Van Hecke, who I believe they've had something going between them throughout the entire game, really. But Gordon, as such a calm, measured individual, you don't ever see him sort of losing his head. And at the key moment, when the pressure is on, similarly to Nick Pope, even though it wasn't a moment of head loss in terms of physicality, it was even worse here with Anthony Gordon. It was just a moment of head loss for Nick Pope in game. But a moment right now, at the precipice of something potentially great for this football club in Newcastle. He's completely lost his head. Newcastle are appealing it right now. Eddie Howe, it was interesting actually, Anthony Gordon just walked past him, Eddie Howe, on the touchline. Eddie Howe didn't even look at him. You could tell he's absolutely viscerally disappointed with that moment of madness. Hits Van Hecke in the face. It is a red card. Newcastle are appealing right now because why wouldn't they? I'm not sure if it can be extended, the ban for Gordon, if they don't win that appeal. But it's a moment of head loss. He is now out for 3 games, which, because it's in all competitions, takes him out of the Carabao Cup final, which is huge because in these moments, you need your quality players, don't you? Alexander Isak's had an unbelievable season, but with Alexander Isak, we know that he's had a few injury problems. Yesterday, he looked to be moving a little bit gingerly as well. Anthony Gordon now out. They are 2 huge blows. Newcastle are going to have to go again. They're going to have to go again with lesser quality as well. And I just feel that it's almost like this club is cursed. It's like they are cursed in these competitions. If you look all the way back in Newcastle's history, they're just massive moments. Massive moments, as I've mentioned. Premier League title, 95-96 when they were leading. We'll look at the most recent, a 98 Cup final, 99 Cup final, 2023 Carabao Cup final. But you just wonder if there is a little bit of an emotional problem when it comes to Newcastle. Are the players getting almost into that adrenaline phase where they're going too far beyond? I mean, with 7 minutes left, your adrenaline gets to that point, and then you just go into catastrophe and you plummet. And you can, in Anthony Gordon's case, it's unforgivable, really. It is unforgivable because cup finals come around every now and again. We all know that Newcastle have been lucky when it comes to last year. But my goodness, what an absolutely huge blow. And it's not that it's over for the Tsunami, of course, but this is a big blow. Newcastle fans, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Anthony Gordon, tut-tut.